This is part 2 of the discussion of the book that I'm reading, Stiff, The Curious Lives of Human Cadavers. And there is a question that is asked in this book is at what scale is the dissection of cadavers still necessary? Because the heart is a king who rules over all organs of the body. The lungs are his executive who carry out his orders. The liver is his commandant who keeps up the discipline. The gallbladder his attorney general, and the spleen his steward who supervises the 5 tastes. There are 3 burning spaces: the thorax, the abdomen, and the pelvis, the sewage system of the body. I thought it was well written. We've known this for a very long time, and of course, we want to do autopsies to look up what is the cause of death, of course. But just for the people who offer their body to science to just dissect all, to do surgeries on cadavers instead of looking at real surgeries done with the teacher surgeon, let's say, that I think is a lot better. So that's the question of in how far do you need to dissect a lot of human cadavers? So I think I didn't say that in my first video, but I thought I will say that in my part 2. And then I was at the chapter of preparing a corpse for an open casket. And while I was reading this, I was really thinking of when my dad died not this January, but last year, January. I actually found my dad 5 minutes after he died, like very short after he died, and it was really a peaceful sight, and he was still warm and soft, but his soul had already left. This was just a shell that I saw, but he was beautiful. Like, my father was a very handsome man, especially when he was young, but the last months before his death, because he had pancreatic cancer, you could really see that he changed a lot. He also got a lot of chemotherapy. That was his choice. And it took out the dad in him. He still had a lot of humor, a sense of humor, and he never wanted to be treated as a patient. And I think that is really important because that's, for me, the same thing. I always tell people, I know I have erythromyalgia, but I don't want you to treat me as a patient. I just want to do you as if I'm completely healthy and normal, because that is how I can go to actually heal. I want understanding for my disease. If I have an attack, then you just have to leave me alone, let me do my thing. But I'm still Karen. I'm not different. I'm just having a disease, but I'm still me, and I do not want to be treated differently because I have this disease. And for my dad, it was exactly the same thing. We were always making jokes, and he always said, I don't want to be treated differently. I'm still the same person. I just have this cancer that is eating me up. But I think that's also what I wanted to say, is that if you treat a person like a patient, then that patient will always stay a patient. Maybe I can illustrate it as well. I have worked also at the Aboriginal Healing Foundation in Ottawa, and they did a lot of activities, let's say, to heal the Inuit and First Nations people to heal from the atrocities that, they have suffered from. But it was almost, they needed funds, of course, and money to be pumped in their healing. But up to what point can you say that healing is done? At what point are you going to say that a patient is not a patient anymore? Just as with, I've went to a psychologue, and for the trauma that I had suffered in Canada, and he, at first time I went, I brought ice packs and a fan to cool myself. And I asked him later, did you think that I was crazy? And he said, no, I knew you had a physical problem, no mental problem, but a physical problem. And the pain with an attack was real and visible. And he said, but he never treated me as a patient. He understood that if I was in pain, that I had to use an ice pack or I had to sit in front of the fan, and I could go home anytime I wanted to leave. But he also said, we can also just talk in you sitting with your face in front of the fan and keep on going. And that was just an understanding of my disease, made it really nice. I was just accepted. At that time, I was still ill, but I just wanted to heal and also heal from my trauma. And that was really nice. I'm still in contact with him. He's in, my psychologist is in, he lives in France right now. And he just became a good friend of mine. And he said that, he knew that I wasn't crazy. This was not something between the ears. This was definitely something wrong with my body, that with the 20-year vegan diet, I explained all that already. But anyways, we had to dress my dad, a couple of hours after someone dies. You have to make sure that he is dressed in the clothing that he's going to be in the casket. And so this was Corona days, so we had to keep like the 1.5 meter distance. But of course, you don't have to do that with a dead person. And me and my sister decided that we were gonna dress my dad, and the other people that normally do it, they just stood on the side because they wanted to keep that distance with their face masks on. And dressing my dad, we've done that before, but of course not when he's dead. So we were still making jokes like, Dad, can you please cooperate? I cannot get your arm through, to get this vest on. Or because my dad was a very large, heavy, tall man, like 2 meters tall. I've got a really tiny mommy and my dad is really tall. It's like a funny couple, actually. But then you get average children, so that turns out well. Although I remember, it's not a detail, actually stupid, but the first thing my dad said when I was born, like I was the second child and my sister was this really cute baby, and then I was born, and my father said, that's the most ugly baby I have ever seen. Because I had this really long arms and legs like an extraterrestrial when I came out. Anyways, I still have a picture of that makes me laugh. I don't know. What was I saying? I was, that we were dressing my dad. So I was reading this in the book, that the stiffness of the body will just slowly occur, especially when it's warm. Decomposing of the body, it goes in different stages. And, we had to dress my dad. That he was a very tall, heavy man, so we had to roll him over. And I've in the past worked also as a how do you call that? I had to take care of people that were in the last stages of their life. It's kind of in a hospice, let's say, and I would then sleep. The people would be still at home in a hospital bed, and I would take care of those people. That was I doing. I was a French teacher at the Dalton School in Den Haag, and I was doing that at the evening, night times, and then because I would go to the people at night, take care of them, and then sleep in their house or in the hospice of wherever. And then I would leave the next morning. And there will always be this alarm bell next to where I slept. So if they needed my help, that they could just ring the bell and I would come and change their diaper or bring them something to eat or to drink, things like that. Actually, I can tell you many stories of the wonderful people that I was with, because Leni Saris is a very famous Dutch writer, and I was also doing that same care for her as well. And I would go there in the evening, and then we would drink tea and have long conversations. And then she would go to bed. The next morning, I would make her breakfast before I would go to work as well. And it was always fun being with her. And well, she finally died from a heart attack. Actually, just after we did grocery shopping, and then she collapsed. And but it was really nice because we became real friends. And this is also what in the corona days, when the old people, they were isolated and nobody was able to visit them. And I think that's the most cruel thing that you can do to a person that is already old and close to death, is to keep them in isolation. Um, but I've got sweet memories of the people that I've met, and you can learn a lot from old people. They have so much wisdom of life, and you can learn most of those people, right? And yeah, it's a shame that it seems to be so unimportant these days. Anyways, so we were preparing my dad, and I was trying to get his arm in his vest. And he was already dead, but I still said, "Oh, sorry, Dad, like I'm pinching your arm." And yeah, it was very interesting because you treat him like he's still alive, and that's, I think, very respectful. But then they had to make sure that his mouth stayed shut. And in the book as well, then they describe it as this curved needle that they go and through the nostril and then behind the teeth, and then they go back up. So to keep the mouth shut. So they go through here, and they put little caps under your eyelids, also to keep them shut. They are the plastic caps. And yeah, reading this chapter in this book just made me relive, the thing with my dad. And it, actually, what he was beautiful once he was nicely dressed, and his mouth was shut. And it, yeah, my dad was a very handsome man when he was alive. But what I told you, those last days before his death, you could really see that, his eyes were like empty. He was not as sharp. But when he was lying there dead, it was just a shell, but he was very handsome again. And my mom said the same thing. He was just before his death, let's say, you could really see that the disease got to him. But when he was actually dead and he was actually lying there, he was all nicely dressed. I thought, wow, there lies my dad. Like, yeah, that was a very nice thing to experience. And he could also stay at home. They brought this cooling system that they put under the bed so that he could stay at home until the funeral, or actually the cremation. And so that for 7 days, he was at the farm. And then every time that we would pass, my dad, if I would go to the basement and he'd say, "Hey, Dad," he's just lying there dead. And I was still talking to him. And that was a really nice way to say goodbye to my dad. That it wasn't like the same day that he died that you had to say goodbye. And no, I could see him every day and talk to him and see him. And I think that just should be the way for everybody. When you die, you stay at home and people can still communicate with you or hold your hand or sit next to you and talk to you. And yeah, and then I also said to my psychologist, it's too bad that my dad didn't, experience this last part of the journey in my healing. And then my psychologist said, but he is looking with you from above, and he is still there, and he would be proud of you. That's what he said. Sorry. So I think that we'll just see the end of this video, and I'll do a part 3 on the other part. Have a nice evening.